So we've been talking about what drives you, and recently a psychologist in our congregation came to me and he said, Adam, I teach the Enneagram test, or some call it the Enneagram test, here at Church of the Resurrection. And he said, yeah, I have you picked for type 3. So what's a type 3? And he said, well, type 3 are admired, impressive, energetic, outstanding, motivators, they're self-starters, they've got it all together, they're efficient and accomplished. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like me. And he said, that's when they're healthy. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, if they're not healthy, then they can look like this: calculating, defensive, arrogant, pretentious, denies and avoids failure, prestige conscious, self-deceptive. And I'm like, oh, well, I must be some other type. I know I couldn't be like that. And I'm kidding around a bit, but the reality is that all of us are one of these 9 types. And every one of those personality types, every one of those Enneagram types has an expression when the individual's healthy and another expression when they're not so healthy. And I find in our lives we bounce back and forth between the two. We've been talking in this series of video segments about what drives you. And sometimes, actually often, it's these personality types described in the Enneagram that are our drivers. And the drive then leads us either into healthy expressions or unhealthy expressions. So when I think about these, I think about Joseph of Arimathea, who was known as a good and righteous man. You may remember that he gave his own tomb to Jesus to bury Jesus in his tomb. But when Jesus was put on trial, and in the days leading up to that, though Joseph was a follower of Jesus, he was so, John tells us, secretly, because he was afraid of what other people would think. He was afraid of what the other members of the council might think of him if he exposed the fact that he was actually a follower of Jesus. And one has to wonder at Jesus' trial whether Joseph of Arimathea was there and whether he kept silent while Jesus was sentenced to death. You see, there are times where the thing that drives us, in Joseph's case, this need for approval of other people, of affirmation, may very well have kept him silent when he needed to be speaking up. I wonder what drives you. What is it in you that drives who you are and how you live? And are you driven primarily by Jesus Christ and your desire to follow and serve Him, by your desire to love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as you love yourself? And as you do that and you walk in a relationship with Christ, led by the Spirit, you find you live into the highest potentials of your own Enneagram type.